it's April 29th. We're in Indianola, Iowa. We're here with Steve Kirby. It's been a long time. We're old friends from the Emerald Society. Steve, you're Irish.
I am, yes. On my dad's side, mainly. My great-grandparents on my great-great-grandparents on my dad's side. No, I'm sorry, my great-grandparents came over from Ireland. They came from County Mayo, which is where the Kirbys were located, and moved to Chicago, and from there spread out. My mom's side, it's more of a mix, but you go back far enough and you'll find some Irish on that side too.
Chicago. So how did you end up in LA?
Oh, well, that's what, my dad was born in Wisconsin. You know, it's my grandfather Kirby married a lady from Wisconsin, I believe it was, and they lived in Wisconsin for quite a while. But then my dad, they moved to Missouri, and my dad kind of grew up in Missouri. Met my mom, they got married, had we 3 kids, and we lived in Missouri for a few years, and then moved out to Southern California when I was about 10 years old, around 1960 thereabouts. And
then you joined the LAPD. How did that happen?
Well, I got into police work kind of by default, I guess. My brother got into police work before I did, and he's younger than I am. And I graduated from college, Cal State Fullerton, had a bachelor's degree in German, which is about as useful as nothing. So anyway, some buddies and I went to Europe, and I got back after traveling around Europe for about 6 months, and decided it was time to find a job. And my brother was with Riverside Police Department at the time. So I was thinking, well, that'd be kind of nice to get into police work maybe down by the beach. And sure enough, I'm looking in the want ads of the Riverside Press Enterprise, and Newport Beach is advertising. So I thought, well, this is fate. So I called up and they said, okay, we'll schedule you for the written exam. Well, I'd been in Europe for about 6 months, so I hadn't shaved or gotten a haircut, because I'd worked at Disneyland while I was going to college, so I was kind of rebelling enough. I finally have long hair. So I thought, it's a written test, no big deal. So I drive down to the old city hall there in Newport Beach, and I had my beard, my longer hair down to my shoulders, I had a tank top on, jeans and sandals, thinking it's a written test, who cares? And I got down there I was one of the last people to arrive, and there was probably 150 guys in there. And I walk in, every body had a coat and tie on. And short hair, clean shaven, except me. And I was going, ooh. But anyway, I passed the test, and the lady from the city said, you will shave and get a haircut before you interview with the chief. I said, well, you bet. So anyway, that's where I got started in police work in Newport Beach. And, spent a little over 3 years in Newport, got out for a short time, thought, nope, got to go back to police work. So I went with Riverside County Sheriffs. I worked out at the old Indio station out in the desert for a while. Actually, it was about 8 months, and then I got hired by LAPD. And pretty much settled into law enforcement with LAPD.
And how many years did you serve with LAPD?
LA was 20 and a half years. I retired from LA and went to work with Riverside County District Attorney's Office as a senior investigator. And I was with them for about 6.5 years for the final retirement.
And what type of investigations did you do for Riverside?
Well, what I've been doing with LA, the last half, I had about a 31.5 year career in law enforcement. And the last half I concentrated on the white collar crimes, the major frauds, investment frauds, embezzlements, and then I got into the public corruption. And that's why they hired me with Riverside County. They needed that kind of experience. And then the last 2.5 years I was with Riverside County, we formed a public corruption unit. And so I became the team leader of that unit, and I was in hog heaven investigating public corruption for the last few years of my career.
Now, how do you get from Los Angeles Police Department to the Los Angeles Police Emerald Society? How does that happen?
Well, I remember seeing a notice. I was working Parker Center, working Bunko Forgery Division, and I saw a notice on a corkboard about the Emerald Society. And I went, well, that looks interesting. I'd never heard of the thing before. And I guess it had been around for a couple of years. I just somehow missed it. And thought, well, you know something, I'll join it. What the heck, I'm Irish American, I'm in law enforcement. So I joined, but I really didn't even go to a meeting for, I don't know, a year or two. It was just kind of, okay, I'm a member. And I remember talking to Judy and my wife, and she says, oh, you gotta go to a meeting, get involved. So I said, oh, okay. So I went to a meeting, and it kind of got me hooked. Part of it was George Hall, who was the pipe major then, was playing the bagpipes. And I had taken a year's worth of bagpipe lessons back in the early 70s when I was going to Cal State Fullerton. But I wasn't serious about it. I was working at Disneyland, so I was more interested in going to the parties and going to class when I had to. So the bagpipes had set to the side. In fact, I put them in a green trash bag. And every time I moved, I'd take that green trash bag and put it under the bed. Wherever I was, it was under the bed. So for about 25 years, this set of bagpipes stayed in this green trash bag. And then when I heard George play at the meeting, the Emerald Society meeting, I asked him, I said, hey, do you give bagpipe lessons? He said, yeah, sure he does. And I said, well, I want to take bagpipe lessons. And of course, it had been so long, so it was like starting all over again. But that's what really got me hooked with the idea of a pipe and drum band, getting back. And then I got more involved with the Emerald Society itself, you know, volunteering for different events, just getting to know the people, you included.
Now, the meetings, they were held at the Los Angeles Police Academy?
Right.
And at every meeting, was there a bagpiper, or most every meeting?
You know, as I recall, George was usually there. But that was something that, as we developed the band, and then when I became president, I wanted to make sure that we always had a piper. And there were times where, in our early days, I was the only person who could play the pipes. So I would stand out there as people walked up to the police academy. I wanted to stand up on an upper level and play the pipes because I thought it was so neat to have the sound of the pipes going as people are walking up to the Emerald Society meeting.
Now, the Los Angeles, I don't know what they call them, the concert band had some casual pipers with them?
It was the Los Angeles Police Pipe Band, which was interesting because, to my knowledge, nobody in that band was in law enforcement, and I don't think anybody in the band even worked for the city of Los Angeles. That was put together by an LAPD sergeant, and I can't remember his name now. But it was a nice idea. It provided a band for the Los Angeles Police Department, although technically the band had no connection to the police department.
So in the beginning, there was you as George Hall and Steve Kirby, two pipers. You can hardly call that a band. So
well, what happened was when George had his own band, it was the 42nd Highlanders, I think. And so when he gave lessons, it was part of the practice for his band. And so as I got more proficient on the pipes, and we had some other Emerald Society members start taking lessons, we started playing with the 42nd Highlanders. We had the same kilt, different uniform shirt. And George's idea was we'll have a combined band, and if we need an Emerald Society band, we'll throw on an Emerald Society shirt. If we're doing a 42nd Highlander band performance, then we'll throw on the 42nd Highlander band. So we took the lessons, but we also, you know, Scott was involved, and some of the other early pipers were taking lessons. And so we learned from George and were involved largely with the 42nd Highlander band in terms of performance.
do you remember some of the early names? You mentioned Scott. I'm sure that's Scott Walton.
Oh yeah, Scott Walton.
Bert, I think, is another.
Bert McCarty was a drummer. Yeah, he joined down the road. Early pipers, Bill Boland, Pat Cooley, Dave Barnett. I'd have to. Jerry Reese, he was with the Emerald City Band for a while, but then he stayed with the 42nd. But and in terms of drummers, Judy started taking drum lessons from George had a drum major or drum sergeant, and so that's where Judy learned to play the snare drum, and Judy became the first Emerald Society pipe and drum band drummer.
Outstanding. Was she excited about that? Or?
Oh, she was. Yeah, it was something we could do together. And I'll tell you what, the first parade we marched in as an Emerald Society band was the Hermosa Beach St. Patrick's Day parade, and that was in 1999, I think, March of 1999. And we had some Emerald Society members marching, and then we had pipers. It was George, me, Scott, Dave Barnett, maybe Pat Cooley, and one or two other pipers, and Judy was our only drummer. It was really kind of a neat distinction. You know, we had 5 or 6 pipers and one drummer, and that was Judy. She was in there working the drums.
Fantastic. Now there's some names that I've come across, and I don't know how and when and where they were affiliated with the pipes and drums. Eric Ringler. Eric Riegler, sorry.
Yeah, now, he was never involved with the Emerald Society band when I was involved with it, when we got the band going. He might have, I know in the early years before we had a band, George Hall would play at Emerald Society events, and he would round up other pipers to play for the Emerald Society. So it's possible that Eric played in that capacity, but when I got involved with the Emerald Society, say around 96, 97, I never knew the name Eric Riegler.
Yeah, I'm going to do a retake on that one because I botched a little bit. So, Eric Riegler, is that a name that was familiar in the band?
Actually, not in the Emerald Society band. I'd heard the name before down the road, you know, after I'd been involved with the pipes for a while, because Eric Riegler's a professional piper, an excellent piper. And he might have been involved with the Los Angeles Police Pipe Band. But in terms of our Emerald Society band, I don't think he was officially involved. He was never involved while I was there. But he might have been involved when the Emerald Society needed pipers. George Hall might have gotten a hold of Eric and said, hey, can you play for the Emerald Society?
Now, what about Ratzenberger?
John Ratzenberger, yeah, he joined the band. I don't know the exact year. It was probably in the early 2000s, maybe 2003, thereabouts. But he joined the band as a drummer. And in fact, Judy gave John drumming lessons. And John was with the band in a number of events. And one of the things I appreciated about John, he was humble in that, you know, he was in cheers, so he was a well-recognized face. In fact, I remember we marched in a parade. I can't remember what the parade was, and it got some TV coverage. And the focus of the cameras for that TV station was on John marching in the band and playing. But John was always very humble about that, and he told me a number of times that he didn't want to detract. He didn't want to be the center of attention and take the focus away from the rest of the band members. And so he was very concerned about that, and I really appreciated that in him.
So from a very, very small core and a part-time band, it began to grow. There was more enthusiasm. You were recruiting.
Well, slowly. We had our initial ups and downs. It was at the end of 1999, the Emerald Society band started becoming involved in more activities. And George Hall had the 42nd Highlanders, a well-established band that was already very busy. And it kind of reached the point where George was getting torn, you know, in 2 different directions. And, you know, I sat down and talked to him, and he had to focus on the 42nd Highlanders. And so we talked about it, and he said he really kind of felt like it was better for him to focus on the 42nd. And then with the Emerald Society, I was getting more comfortable on the pipes, and we had some other people that were coming up on the pipes. And so George kind of went with the 42nd Highlanders. And then the Emerald Society, we said, okay, we'll develop our Emerald Society band. And so by default, I became the pipe major. Not that I was ready by any means, but by default, I became the pipe major. And in the early years, we started out with, a certain number of pipers, but we started having problems keeping people involved. And I was always saying, okay, what's going to work out best in terms of practice? Is it Saturday morning or is it a weeknight practice? And I remember we were trying weeknights, practicing on weeknights up at the LA Police Academy. And it just wasn't working out. Sometimes people would show up, we tried to practice once a week. And it got to the point where there were times where I was the only piper. And we had two drummers, Judy and Bert McCarty. And Bert was a parole officer with the Department of Corrections. And it was some rough going at that point. There were times where I told Judy, I said, I'm not sure this is worth it. But she was very supportive, and she just kept encouraging me. And she finally convinced me. I said, okay, if I'm the only piper in the Emerald Society band, then I'm going to be the best piper I can be, and we'll have one piper and two drummers, and we'll have a band. So we kind of got through that rocky period, and then things started coming together. Scott had gone with the Nicholson pipe band, a competition band, which I think was good because with our band, once George concentrated on the 42nd Highlanders, we didn't have the depth of knowledge in terms of a pipe band. So Scott spent time with the Nicholson. He learned a tremendous amount from being a piper with Nicholson. So when he came back to the band, he was able to contribute so much, so much more than I could contribute. So we got through that rocky period, and then we started growing. We started getting more and more people interested. We started being more recognized, and we started playing more events. And of course, as you can see today, the band is growing great guns. I think it's wonderful.
Now, when you mentioned John Ratzenberger not wanting to detract from the band effort, I've noticed that the band also attracts some qualified professional musicians that also play with the band. Malcolm McNabb, I think, is a very accomplished player.
Malcolm is a trumpeter par excellence. And here again, Malcolm was so humble. I didn't know his background until Scott said, oh, look at Malcolm's website. And I looked at the website and I'm going, holy mackerel. I mean, this guy's a studio musician. He's played in trumpet in all these movies I've seen. But Malcolm was so humble. And where I really realized Malcolm's character was, we played at it was a narcotics officers convention, I think, in Long Beach, at the Long Beach Center. And so we were walking, we were going to lead a procession from one end down this big corridor area. And we had two buglers, one Long Beach, I think one LAPD, and they were going to do taps, echo taps. So anyway, I was walking with Malcolm, we're just batting the breeze. We walked past, I think, the Long Beach officer with a trumpet. And this guy goes, are you Malcolm McNabb? And I'm going, what? And Malcolm goes, yes, I am. And the guy was just like in awe, like he'd seen a god. And Malcolm is such a talented guy and so humble. A great person. So yeah, the band attracted people, and it was great. We met wonderful people in the band.
So, as pipe major, you're also at this time president of the Emerald Society?
Right, yeah, I was cross-trained. Yeah.
And for your whole LAPD career, you stayed deeply involved?
Yeah.
Both elements?
Well, actually, for my LAPD and then when I went with Riverside County DA's office, yeah, I stayed involved with the band really right up until a week or two before we moved back here to Iowa.
Wow. And that was in 2008 you moved to Iowa?
Right, August of 2008.
So there were times of you mentioned some ebbs and flows in the society, and then it started to gel.
Well, with the band, yeah, but the same with the society. You know, I think every organization like that goes through its ups and downs. And I know when I was the president, I did two-year terms. It was 1998 through 2001. And there were some divisions in the Emerald Society about what should the Emerald Society be about. And there were actually some Emerald Society members that didn't even think we needed a pipe. So there was some headbutting that went on during those 4 years, especially the latter 3 of the 4 years. And you know, I had a vision of the Emerald Society as a law enforcement related organization that would do social activities and help organizations out, and have a pipe and drum band that would play at civic events and funerals, and just be a real contribution to the society around us. And there were other people that didn't want the society to do all that. And so there were some rough times, and you know, I kept fighting for the idea of the band, kept fighting for the band. And then after 4 years as president, I said, well, you know, it's time for somebody else to come in. So I didn't run again. And during a 2-year period, I guess, 2002, 2003, I was a pipe major. And that was a rough period because some of the individuals that didn't want a pipe band or weren't happy with a pipe band had more positions of authority, I guess you could say, in the Emerald Society than I did. And it was a rough time. I mean, the band kept going. I was determined. You know, this is our band. We're playing. We're doing stuff. But in the background, there was some headbutting going on then. And it reached the point where, after talking to Judy and, you know, pulling her out of the hole in the ceiling, that I said, you know, I'm going to run again for president. And so I guess it was 2003. Yeah, November 2003, I ran again for president, got reelected president, and then was president again from 2004 through 2007. And when I got elected president in January of 2004, I talked to Scott. I said, you know, Scott, I'm the president, but I'm still the pipe major. I don't think it's a good idea. I said, I'll be president. Would you be pipe major? And I was right up front. I said, you have more musical knowledge than I do. I said, I'm mechanical with this stuff. If we're going to progress, you have to be the pipe major because you're the musician. And fortunately, he agreed. And so he became the pipe major, as he is the pipe major now. And I spent another 4 years, 2 terms as president of the Emerald Society. And Scott became the pipe major, and with his musical knowledge and education and experience, he was the factor in why the band is where it is now.
You'd be happy to be back there in Los Angeles and see how vibrant and strong that they are. Every Saturday they meet, so they overcome whether it should be a Wednesday night or a Saturday night. Religiously, they're there. They practice. You know, of course, they've been in the Rose Parade.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's quite a coup to be in the Rose
Parade.
Yeah,
we even saw the Rose Parade back here in Iowa and saw a little clip of the band. You know, so but yeah, it's we're on the email list, and so it's great to see the band's involvement. And the thing is, it's one of the things I always wanted was competition bands, competition pipe and drum bands. They pretty much just play for money, or play in competition. I mean, they're real businesslike about it. You know, if you don't have the money to pay for the band at a funeral, they're not going to play. And from day one with our band, we never had that attitude. We played for people. We played for meaningful ceremonies and events. And most of the time, we played for free. In fact, when the band started out, everybody had to buy their own uniform. You bought your own kilt, everything. So that showed the dedication and the focus of the band, which I liked.
You know, Steve, I don't think most people understand. I like any occupation. If you have to hold down a full-time job, you can be a nightclub musician, but the mainstay is your full-time job. And if you can't get time off to play with the band, then the band suffers in their nightclub gigs. So you have that same pressure in law enforcement, and I would think, if I could editorialize, that it's gotten worse today because of the 12-hour shifts. So was there a period where you couldn't recruit police officers because they worked in LA and lived in Riverside for lower priced housing?
Well, that could have been a factor. I never had anybody tell me that directly, but the shift work was a factor. Now, for me, when I got involved with the Emerald Society, I was a detective working Bunko Forgery Division, so it was basically a Monday through Friday job, weekends and holidays off. So that made it easier, although in the early years of the band, we would have to decline things, say if it was during the day on a weekday, because sometimes I couldn't get the time off. But so the nature of police work, the hours of working, was always a factor, especially when we didn't have a lot of people. Now, the way the band is now, they've got a depth in both the bagpipers and drummers, so that if somebody has to work, you know, they can still do a lot of performances because they have more people to draw from. But that was a factor in the early years.
Now you've, I know the band, while you were president or pipe major, went to Ireland. The band took a trip to Ireland.
Well, the Emerald Society, actually.
Emerald Society.
Yeah, Scott put it together. That was in 2004. But Scott put that trip together for the Emerald Society. So we had a number of band members, but not the entire band went.
Okay.
Although Scott and I, we took our bagpipes and we played it at a number of different locations there in Ireland. It was a lot of fun.
And well received?
It was, in fact, on part of the trip we went to the Kilbegan distillery, and it was a historical Irish distillery, and they treated our group like royalty. You know, they went into the tasting room and they opened up all kinds of bottles of whiskey. Well, in this town, it was Locke's Distillery, and I think the town was Kilbegan. They had put together a memorial for September 11, 2001, and I mean back after September 11th. And they actually had members of the, I think, NYPD and NY Fire Department, Emerald Society Pipes and Drums, come and play when they did the dedication ceremony. They marched through town, big parade marching through town to this little place in the park. So while we were there, we were down in the tasting room trying all the whiskey. They asked Scott and I, would we play our bagpipes at this little memorial location in the park? And we went, yeah. They went ahead and they cleaned the place up, you know, polished everything. And when we got there, Scott and I had our bagpipes, and they had, I think it was the mayor of the town, got up and gave a little speech, and then Scott and I played Amazing Grace. And that was one of those, you know, where it chokes you up. You know, you kind of saying, boy, this is meaningful. But that was one of the great things with the band. We did a lot of meaningful performances like that.
Now the band over several years has gone back to Washington, D.C. during National Police Week.
Right.
Have you participated in that? And
yeah, a number of times. Yeah, that was always a lot of fun. In fact, when it started out, Scott and I went back. I'd gone back a couple of times as president of the Emerald Society for the national conference. But I think the first year, I just marched with some people. I mean, we wouldn't play the pipes. But I remember the first time we took the pipes back, it was just Scott and I. And we joined one of the other bands. I think it might have been some federal law enforcement band. I remember some immigration guys were in it. And so we just they played some standard tunes. And then as time went by, as our band grew more, then we were able, I remember, I think it was a couple of times, we went back and marched as an Emerald Society band. And we had the color guard from LAPD come back and march with us, and that was always a very meaningful time. In fact, there was, you know, of course, after you play in March, you always look for the closest Irish pub. And there was one of the trips back there. We'd gone to the Irish pub, you know, and you take your uniform shirt off. And there was, afterwards, there was, 5 of us, I think. It was Susan Morrison on the pipes, and I, and Judy had her drum. And we had, I think there was, Bill Parker, retired from LAPD, was playing the drum too with Judy. And so it was the 4 of us with Susan's husband Art, an associate member of the Emerald Society. We're walking back to the hotel. And I mean, it's like, you know, 11:30, midnight, something like this. And we were tired, we'd had a lot to eat and drink. And so we're walking along, and we passed the police memorial. And somebody walks out and says, "Oh, can you guys play Amazing Grace?" There was a widow there. And excuse me if I get choked up, but there was a widow there at the wall where her husband's name was. Well, for some reason, Amazing Grace was never played at his funeral. It was an on-duty death. And he was from one of the southeast states, I think it was. So I first told the guy, I said, "No," I said, you know, I'm thinking, we've been out all day, all this stuff. If you're going to do a performance, you're going to do well. And the guy says, "No, please." So I turned to our other band members. I said, "Let's do it, guys. Let's put our shirts on, and we'll go do it." And anyway, we went over there and played Amazing Grace. And we did our standard. I did the first verse solo. Then Susan came in and the drums came in, and we went through a verse of Amazing Grace. And then I did the tag at the end. And the widow, she came up and hugged us. You know, it was really a meaningful event. You know, it's one of the things I'll always remember.
Sure.
So,
very significant emotional event. Very, very,
yeah.
very nice.
But it was because of our band and our focus that we were able to do things like that.
And you would be proud. I had the opportunity this past year at the Pipe and Drum Cigar fundraiser.
Oh yeah.
And they had family members of killed in action service members and some police killed in action family members at the cigar fundraiser, and they had the same emotion and the same feeling that you have because the band performed for them in that very solemn occasion, and it was very moving to hear their testimony and then to hear from your side how the emotion is equal on both sides.
Oh yeah.
Very, very nice. So recruitment. So how does the band recruit? Should it be all police officers or composite or?
You know, my focus always was somebody should be an Emerald Society member first. They have to show an interest in the Emerald Society. The more sworn officers in the band, the better. But the thing is, we have, and we still have, some great non-sworn people who are dedicated to the Emerald Society and to the Emerald Society band. And that was always my focus. You know, it didn't matter sworn or not sworn. They had to be interested in the Emerald Society first, because the band represented the Emerald Society. And that was the approach I took in terms of recruitment.
Now obviously the society was founded by Bill McNeely and Matt Mulvihill, a few others in the plank holders or the original members of the society. The name changed at one point from the Los Angeles Police Department Emerald Society to the Los Angeles Police Emerald Society, and of course that gave it a broader reach toward other ancillary organizations, the CHP, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the FBI, whatever.
Sheriff's Department,
among others.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about the support of the LAPD? I know today they enjoy tremendous support, but was it always that way? Did they always have
No, not at all. In fact, for some time, I guess the Emerald Society was founded in 1992. And for some time, there were people that viewed the LA Police Emerald Society as a male white racist organization. In fact, my brother, he spent his career with Riverside County Sheriffs after Riverside Police Department. But I remember years, when I was president even, he went to some kind of training and he ran into a sergeant from LAPD, and he mentioned that I was president of the Emerald Society, my brother. And this sergeant in LAPD basically responded with, "Oh, that's kind of a racist organization." So anyway, he told me about it, gave me the name of the sergeant. So I wrote a letter, not on duty, to the sergeant, a personal letter, saying, you know, I've heard this is what you think of the society. I'd be happy to clear up any misconceptions you might have. I never heard back from the sergeant. But there wasn't a lot of support in the department for the Emerald Society until Willie Williams came in. He was the chief after Darrell Gates. And surprisingly enough, from what I heard, Chief Gates didn't have a lot of support for the Emerald Society. But Willie Williams came in from Philadelphia, so he was quite familiar with Emerald Societies. And he kind of looked on the Emerald Society with favor. He didn't do a whole lot, but he wasn't indifferent to the Emerald Society. So during Chief Williams's tenure, you know, there's a little minor recognition of the Emerald Society, but that changed then when Chief Parks came in. He didn't really have any interest in the Emerald Society. And while Chief Parks was there, the Emerald Society was in existence, but it didn't really have any support to speak of from LAPD. Then Chief Bratton came in, and things changed. You know, he was from New York. He knew the Emerald Societies, and he loved pipes and drums. We played a number of events where Chief Bratton was there, and there was one time in practice shortly after he became chief. We were up at the academy practicing, and Chief Bratton was standing way over on the other side of a field, and I saw him, and I just kept practicing. He walked over to us and didn't want me to stop playing when he walked up. And then we came to the end of the tune set. He just started talking, smile on his face, walked around talking to everybody. And the Emerald Society started getting a lot of support after that. A tremendous amount of recognition from the department, which was nice. In fact, when Bratton, he served a 4-year term, and then when he got reappointed for another 4 years, he asked our band to play for his reappointment ceremony up at the police academy. So we actually led the contingency in there on the field there at the police academy for Bratton. That's how much things had changed.
Now with Bratton, some of the other Irish names, Jim McDonald, was he active in the society?
Well, he was as much as he could be, but he was a commander that became an assistant chief. So, you know, when guys get up that high, they're pretty busy. You know, Gary Brennan was a classmate of mine when I went through the academy with Newport Beach, and we went through the LAPD academy. But Gary became an Emerald Society member, and he was always very supportive of the society. But you know, when you're at that high of a level, your life is tied up with other things. But Gary was always very supportive. So we had Emerald Society members in the upper ranks of LAPD.
And then would they request you, knowing that you existed for functions?
Once things changed, especially under Bratton, yeah, then we started playing. I mean, there were a number of times that Scott and I would just play at a small LAPD ceremony of some kind. It was just, hey, we'd like a couple of pipers to come down and play. And so Scott and I, since we were right there, we'd go down and play. So it became more recognition, more acknowledgement, and really more willingness to ask us to play.
There have been times when it's been suggested that the pipe band become the official LAPD pipe band, so that travel and fees and payments could be officially subsidized. Do you have a feeling on that one way or the other?
Yeah, I was never, I didn't like that idea simply because it was the Los Angeles really area police Emerald Society. If you wanted a real name for this Emerald Society, it would have been Los Angeles Area Police Emerald Society. And because the band was made up of a lot of non-LAPD personnel. So my feeling was the band could play for LAPD events just as readily as they could play for Long Beach PD events, LA County Sheriff's events, which we did. So that there wasn't this sense that the band is the LAPD band. No, we were the Los Angeles area Emerald Society Pipes and Drums.
So I remember a young LA County Sheriff Sergeant at the Santa Anita racetrack a long time ago met a young gentleman new to the Emerald Society, or at least not terribly active in the Emerald Society, when an election was coming up, and they probably needed some revival in leadership. Do you know anything about that?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. The stars are in alignment, I guess. Yeah, because you were the vice president, and Matt, who was the president, wasn't going to run again. And so I had talked to Judy about getting more involved with the Emerald Society. And she says, yeah, he says, one person can make a difference. And so I said, oh, okay. But I encouraged you. I remember talking with you there at the Irish Fair, saying, hey, George, you're the vice president. Why don't you run for president, and I'll run for vice president? Because I don't know anybody. You know everybody. And you said, no. And you ended up talking me into running for president so you could run for vice president again. Yeah, so that was really, it was a combination of the support from Judy, and you're saying, no, you run for president. That started this whole ball rolling, I guess is what you could say. So thank you.
Well, good choice. Excellent choice. I remember the early days of the Emerald Society, and between you and Scott and a number of other people that really got behind it and made the society. We've had our ups and downs. I'm sure we will probably have some ups and downs in the future.
Oh, sure.
But we're strong today, and we're building. Tom Kelleher was an early member. Tom is now the president
It's great.
of the Emerald Society, and bringing a lot of the Long Beach officers that were members back into the fold. Well, it's been great talking with you. Great to visit you here in your beautiful home. Gorgeous home. I can see why people would leave Los Angeles for Indianola, Iowa.
Yeah, that's okay. Some people say Indiana, but yep, Iowa, yep. We're happy to be here. There's things we miss, especially when it comes to the Emerald Society and the band, but we're on the email list for the band, so we can experience things vicariously, and it's nice to know the band is going strong.
I had the opportunity as we traveled out west to meet with J. Martin Crowley, who is the chief of police for Boys Town, Nebraska. Marty, as he's called, told me that he was a deputy chief with the Omaha Police Department and one of the founding members of their Emerald Society. I know that how far away is Omaha?
Oh, it's about 110 miles, I think.
And what Emerald Society are you a member of now?
Yes, I joined the Omaha Area Emerald Society, yeah.
I understand their big event, obviously, is their St. Patrick's Day Parade in Omaha.
Right. Yeah.
Have you found that green bag tucked under your bed with the pipes and brought them out to travel to Omaha?
Well, not to travel to Omaha, though. I've brought the pipes out. I play it here from time to time. As you know, we've got a rather large yard area out there, so it's kind of nice. And then our neighbors love to hear the sound of the bagpipes. But this St. Patrick's Day being on a Sunday this year, we had a party here, and I wore my Emerald Society kilt and Emerald Society black golf shirt, and we had about 20, 25 people here, and I got the pipes out and played, and so we had a good time.
I know you're very active in the local basilica. Have you ever brought the pipes to the basilica?
Well, interesting that you mentioned that, because since St. Patrick's Day was on a Sunday, the choir director talked to Father Aquinas about it, and Father Aquinas said, that's fine as long as Mass is over. So anyway, we have the basilica is classic. It was built in the early 1900s, and it's wonderful. The choir loft is in the very back, and it's way up high. So after Mass, I walked out and stood there by the railing and played. And normally after the organ ends with the recessional, everybody pops up and they're gone. I fired up the pipes and people froze. And I played a couple of verses of When the Piper Plays, and then went into Amazing Grace. And it was great. When I got to Amazing Grace, there were actually people starting to sing Amazing Grace as I was playing. So that was a classic, probably the first time bagpipes have ever been played in the Basilica of St. John in Des Moines. But the acoustics were wonderful. And it was great. I enjoyed doing it. And then we came back home, and later that afternoon we had a big party here. So.
Well, you know, I'm proud to have known you as president of the Emerald Society. I'm thrilled that you kept the band going at a time when it could have very easily disappeared.
Right.
The interest is still there. It's getting vibrant, more vibrant every day. A pleasure meeting you.
George, it was great meeting you. Great seeing you again. I so appreciate you guys coming by. This is wonderful.
And you know that Malcolm and Scott want to do a documentary on the band, and I think that hopefully if the sound is okay on this video, and it should be, we'll be right on target.
Well, and any little sound, I don't know if you heard Michael and Mary playing out there. There's a little bit of a roar as they're rolling around, so you might have some background.
Michael and Mary, they're
they are our 13-month-old puppies, dogs. They're a mix of Queensland Blue Heeler and Great Pyrenees. And they were born on St. Patrick's Day in 2012. And we brought them home about a month later. And Michael now weighs close to 100 pounds. Mary weighs probably around 90 pounds. But their name, we have our pub here, Michael and Mary's, which are my middle name, Judy's middle name. And so we decided to name our dogs Michael and Mary.
in Michael and Mary's pub.
Yep.
What a beautiful pub it is.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you much,
George, thanks a lot. That was great.
We can play it back on your TV if you want to see what.
Oh, well, it's not. It might. Let's see how our dinner's coming along.
Okay.
Because it's